Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is directed by Nicholas Meyer, written by Jack B. Sowards, and stars everyone from the first movie, but now including Ricardo Montalban, Bibi Besh, Merritt Buttrick, and Kirstie Alley. And in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Khan Noonien Singh, this superhuman played by Ricardo Montalban, returns to get his hands on a potentially powerful weapon called Genesis, as well as seek vengeance on Kirk, who had exiled him 15 years prior. Now, when it comes to most of these Star Trek movies and the episodes, they are episodic in nature. They don't really feed into each other in terms of plot. You don't have to watch like all the previous ones to be able to understand the current one. However, for this movie in particular, I think it's actually kind of required viewing to watch the original series episode entitled Space Seed. That's where Khan first appears, and it'll really give you context for the story here. And Wrath of Khan is widely regarded as the best of the original films, and that is absolutely true. This is such a great movie. It's just the complete package when it comes to Star Trek. It's exciting, it's intellectually stimulating, and it's surprisingly really emotional. First, you really have to give it up to the director Nicholas Meyer, because this is really like the best of what Star Trek has to offer. I'm so thankful that what Meyer did for this sequel is that he retained the sense of wonder that Robert Wise gave to the first movie. But he understood that to give this sense of wonder, he didn't have to do it just through large-scale visual effects. Instead, he just does it through tiny bits of world building that keep us interested. Thankfully as well, Wrath of Khan has a lot more action than the last movie. However, the action here is unique in the sense that most of this movie really is this cat-and-mouse naval battle between Kirk's Enterprise and Khan's Reliant. So the quote-unquote fight scenes here are less about firepower and they're more about tactics and strategy, and somehow it's made to be really exciting here. But perhaps the most notable thing that Nicholas Meyer does here is that deep down, this is a story about finding one's purpose late in life. You know, this is a story about really old guys really just coming to terms with who they are, and no other sci-fi franchise, like especially today, has tackled that, and it gives Wrath of Khan like this really mature tone. And I normally don't really like it when people compare Star Trek to other franchises and say like it's more mature and stuff, but here, watching this movie, you really do feel that mature tone. And this tone is helped along by a typically solid cast. Of course, DeForest Kelley as Bones is funny as usual. Walter Koenig as Chekhov gets a much more expanded role here. He gets to do a lot more. He gets to stretch his emotional range a little bit. And just like in the first movie, the new characters here are really memorable. Bibi Besh plays Dr. Carol Marcus, who used to have a thing with Kirk. Merritt Buttrick plays her son David, and Kirstie Alley plays this other Vulcan named Savik, and they're all memorable because they have clear relationships, or at least attitudes, towards the other characters that keeps their personalities pretty dynamic. But of course, Wrath of Khan features an iconic performance from Ricardo Montalban as the title villain. He's just so fun to watch. Like, he chews the scenery a lot, but you can just tell he relishes in his evil, and you can tell Khan just really wants to hurt Kirk, and he's just such a great villain for Star Trek. But most importantly for me, Wrath of Khan features career best performances, in my opinion, from William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. They will maybe reduce you to tears by the end of this movie. Like, they strip these characters down to the most human they've ever been, and just seeing their friendship rendered here is just so beautiful, and it really is the bedrock for the entire original series. Overall, Wrath of Khan actually feels like a much smaller movie than the first one, which makes a lot of sense once you see that it was made for about a fourth of the original's budget. And this is reflected as well in the visuals. However, the visuals don't necessarily take a step down. They do like little tweaks here and there to make things look better, in fact. Almost this entire movie takes place in outer space, but this time when the Enterprise is flying around, it doesn't look like just a miniature on a string. Seeing what Genesis can do is still visually impressive, and the interiors of the ships are a lot more believable. Like, when they get hit, there's actual destruction, there's actual debris. There's also really good makeup work and surprisingly realistic animatronic work, especially with those like little worm things that Khan likes to use. Now, unfortunately, Jerry Goldsmith did not return to do the music for this movie simply because they couldn't afford him, but James Horner's music for this movie does get the job done and manages to integrate the classic themes into the score as well. And there's just something I can't explain that I love about all the classic Star Trek sounds, you know, from doors sliding open and the transporter and the alarms. Like, again, if you watch this movie without having seen Star Trek before, like, it's gonna sound really campy, but I guess I'm used to them and I love them. Even the story in Wrath of Khan feels a lot smaller, but it's so character focused that Wrath of Khan actually doesn't feel like just another episode like some of the other Star Trek films. Kirk, Spock, and Khan, and even some of the minor characters all have their little arcs to accomplish, and they're all really interesting to to watch. And one thing that Wrath of Khan gets right in making this a character-focused story is the fact that you really feel like this is a team effort. You feel like everyone is doing their part and, doing what they do best to get this mission done. And the writing in this movie is incredibly smart in that there are little twists here and there that keep the story somewhat unpredictable despite the straightforward plot. And again, I normally don't like it when people compare Star Trek to other franchises and say that it's a lot smarter than those franchises, but watching Wrath of Khan, you really do just feel smarter, because the dialogue never dumbs anything down for the audience. It trusts the audience enough to keep up with these strategies that Kirk and Khan are employing, and it really feels like that. When you're watching this movie, it really feels like you're on board the Enterprise and you're just watching these people think 2 steps ahead of each other. And I was really worried while watching this movie that the emotional messages would be kind of shoehorned in there, but they're not. They're actually woven into the story very well. And the pacing in Wrath of Khan is great for what it wants to be. The editing here is by William Paul Dornish, and he really allows for a lot of suspense to build, and his editing also lets us see both Kirk's side and Khan's side, and we get to see both strategies being put into place. This leads me into my couple of minor issues with Wrath of Khan. First of all, there's a section leading into the third act that doesn't really feel that well edited. It kind of slows down to a halt, and whenever they jump from Kirk to Khan and Khan to Kirk, it just feels a bit awkward. I don't know. It's not juxtaposed very well. And another small issue I have with Wrath of Khan is that something happens with Chekhov halfway through that kind of solves a problem that I wish would have been resolved in a less convenient way. Also, there are moments throughout the movie where I feel like Khan should have been a bit more ruthless. It just didn't feel right with his character. But those things aren't enough to take away from the fact that I think Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is a great movie. I think it's absolutely required viewing if you're a Star Trek fan. Even if you're just a fan of the new films, I think you'll find a lot to love in this old one because it's just so unique, and it really does show what the original series had that was totally unique to every other Star Trek thing. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.